Are you a college student waiting for that stimulus check to hit the mail so that they can go hit the wall at the club? Well, I have some news for you, or rather a friend of mine has some news for you. Well, you're not gonna get shit. So the topic of today's discussion is going to be surrounding the federal stimulus bill turned law last Friday, or well, this Friday by President Trump, that is essentially granting $1,200 to all tax filing adults and $500 for every qualifying dependent. Now, this is a problem because I ain't getting no money. Nah. Okay. The real reason that this is a problem is because I am getting no money. And let's talk about that. So, essentially, parents who are taking care of any dependents that are over the age of 17 are not going to actually be receiving those $500. You might be thinking, oh, why do these college students need $500 anyways, right? Most of them aren't even living with their parents. They can just get a side job or whatever. We need assistance just as badly as anyone else. And that's because right now, people are not hiring. So all of us that were dedicating our time to studying and didn't really have as much free time or the flexibility with our schedule to take on a full-time job or a part-time job to cover our expenses are now suffering. Because guess what's happening? Jobs are slowing down, bills ain't stopping, necessity for parental support ain't stopping, governmental help is stopping, and that's kind of rotten. So even if we wanted jobs, a lot of places aren't hiring for us. And let me just explain that it's not as easy as just going for a job, right? Because right now, everybody's staying indoors. There's not as many consumers out there, shopping around for clothes in a retail store, or there's not as many people going out and actually dining in at a restaurant and things like that. And at this point in time, most students are unskilled workers. Right now, we're getting an education so we can be skilled workers in computer sciences, in the medical field and whatnot. But right now, we're just unskilled workers. Where are we supposed to float to? All of the places that are the most impacted by this virus. And now the government is saying, yeah, you were studying before and you were getting support from your parents. Now, guess what? You don't get anything. And the people who you were looking forward to supporting you aren't getting any relief either. And I think that that's kind of messed up. And because even if we wanted jobs, we can't get them. We can't get them. It's like there's over 3 million unemployed Americans right now. I'll throw up a screenshot of proof right here. And you guys just expect us to just survive? And not only that, but also survive on our poor parents who were supporting us when times were good, but now that times are hit hard and they can't get a little break? They get $1,200 measly dollars for a one-time payment that might be enough to cover their expenses. Let me just say, it's basically senseless. It's a little bit messed up because let me paint a scenario for you. These guidelines are kind of messed up, not just even for college students, but they're kind of messed up in the sense that, think about it, you could be 18 years old by this whole 17 and under, criteria, where we can have a situation where one kid is 17 and one of your kids is 17 and your second kid is 18, and you're gonna get a $500 check for that 17-year-old who's in 11th grade, but you won't get a $500 check for that 18-year-old who's in 12th grade who needs just as many things as the 17-year-old and is still in all aspects pretty much a child. They still depend on you to pay their phone bill, to drive them to school and stuff like that, and just because they're 18, they're no longer qualified to receive the same check that your 17-year-old will receive. I don't know. It's just kind of weird to me. Now, I just want to back up and say, of course, there have to be trade-offs with any good thing. There's a saying, you have to take the good, you got to take the bad with the good, and that applies to this situation. But I just want to say it sucks, and I want to kind of have a discussion about it. Because these are my thoughts on it. Like I said, bills aren't stopping. We've grown a dependency to our parents that's not really our fault. So let me tell you, as a college student, when you go out looking for a job, people or businesses don't want to deal with complicated schedules. And as a student, it's kind of complicated majority of the time. Sometimes you have classes in the morning, sometimes you have classes in the afternoon, sometimes you have classes at night, and sometimes you just have these weird blocks of time where okay, you guys might be sitting from behind your computer and saying, come on, how do you not have time? And it's like, okay, you're supposed to be studying a certain amount of hours per credit hour class per week. That honestly adds up to at least a part-time job, and that's if you're not even taking 5 classes. And then besides that, like I said, our class schedules are usually during really awkward periods of time. So you might have one period of time where it's like a 3-hour gap till your next class, and like where are you gonna work for only 2 hours? And then after that you have more classes. And basically what I'm getting at is that you could literally have classes spread out throughout the day that don't give you the chance to work. And no, not a lot of companies are sympathetic to that, to be like, okay, maybe you can just come in 1 hour on Monday and then we'll take you in on Tuesday from 5 to 7. You're not getting the job. I mean, I'm sorry, but it's just that the college schedule is a little bit complicated, and it's really not very forgiving. And then you also have to budget in studying time. It adds a lot of work throughout the day. It adds a lot of time throughout the day that you have to dedicate to your studies, and it's not easy to get a job while you're studying. So even if you want to be dependent, it's pretty hard when you're in college. It's not impossible, I'm not trying to say that, but it is stressful, and some parents, rightfully so, don't want to see their students go through that. A lot of parents want their children to just focus on their schoolwork when they're in college, and this is why they're supporting them. It's not because they don't want to work. It's not because their parents are, too baby with their children, but honestly, some parents see a lot of value in education, and they don't want you to have a subpar education because you're trying to juggle too many things at once and putting too much attention on a minimum wage job, when you could be putting more attention to your studies that in 2-4 years is going to net you way more than any of the money that you could make during this time. Now, with that being said, I just want to clear that up and say that even if a student wanted to get a job before things were bad, it's pretty hard with the scheduling and the studying time necessary. Also, the parents are really not at fault for creating this dependency, because honestly they don't really create this dependency. Just the nature of college and the way that life works and time works, it's really not forgiving to college students and their time. Like I said, what I'm essentially getting at is that this is not simply a problem of college students being lazy and deserving to be cut out of the bill, or rather out of the law, because of laziness or of careless parental creation of this dependency. The dependency has always been there. Parents have just been fulfilling it. And now with online classes, it's important to realize that although we don't have as much physical time inside a classroom with the professor, we are still required to dedicate the same amount, if not more, hours into our studies, because especially for some of those classes that are a lot more difficult in nature, we're talking about those engineering courses and whatnot. When you're trying to do it through a computer, even though you have the video chat or whatever, it's just not the same. And some people don't learn the same through a computer screen than being more hands-on in the classroom, like actually visualizing it and watching the professor work, or being able to just raise their hand and ask the professor questions. Online learning doesn't necessarily free up time, because some people don't learn that well through an online medium, and because of that, sometimes in the more advanced courses, like for example some engineering courses, there is now an additional amount of time needed for all of those concepts that you can't just ask instantly like you could in a class, right? So let's say a problem was put up on the board, or a concept was being explained through a pre-recorded video in an online class. Before, if that same concept was being presented within the class, you could just raise your hand and ask a question and get instant answers. However, now that things are online, if you don't understand that concept, you kind of have to resort to Google or emailing your professor and waiting for a response. It makes the duration longer for how much time it actually takes to learn that specific concept or that specific lesson. So it's still taking us the same amount of time to study the material, watch the pre-recorded lectures, or even sit in on some of these camera communicated or video conference lecture thingies, whatever. So it's still taking time out of our days in order for us to continue our studies. And so even then, having a job right now isn't too viable, just because there's a little bit more disconnect in regards to physical contact. There's still a lot of mental contact that actually needs to happen between the college student and the actual material itself. So sometimes even now, having a job, especially like I said with harder majors or harder classes, is not really viable, and it's unfair to assume that they'll be okay, because some of us aren't okay. Essentially, I want to find out why young adults are being cut from this bill now turned law when we have the same necessity as before. In this case, our parents need support more than ever in order to, trickle it down to us. So I just have those questions as to like why we couldn't be included. Does an 18-year-old not matter as much as a 17-year-old? Does their mouth take less to feed than a 17-year-old? Most of all, I feel bad, for the parents of college students like my own, who are pitching in to help their students or to help their children succeed in their studies, and they're basically just getting a kick in the shin right now with this tax bill excluding their dependents. I think that at the very least what the government should have done is have extended the bill, now turned law, to also cover people who are being claimed as dependents, because this bill, I forgot to mention this earlier, is also affecting people's parents. So if you're 24, 26 and you're taking care of your elderly grandmother or your parent, and you're still claiming them as a dependent because they are over the age of 17 at 84 years old or 86 years old, 87 years old, whatever age, your grandparents also aren't going to be getting a check, even though now you're 26 years old and you still have the same amount of bills to pay, less income coming in, and now you still have to provide for your dependent, in this case your grandmother or even your mother, depending on her age, and you're not getting any help. You're not getting any help, and I don't know. It just seems like very questionable. I don't know, it just seems a little bit unfair sometimes. Like I said, the fact that this bill, now turned law, is excluding an 18-year-old high schooler, but including a 17-year-old high schooler, and not being extended towards, our seniors who are dependent of their children, of their grandchildren, or their children. And then it's just very head scratching to me, and yeah. So at the end of the day, I created this video basically to see what your guys' takes on it was. I just wanted to bring this topic up, and yeah, just let me know what thoughts you guys have on this, and if any of you guys are affected by this, just let me know in the comments, and maybe we can talk, and we can maybe just continue talking about our feelings on this. If you disagree with my sentiment, and you agree with how the bill was created, and basically the criteria that they have laid out, let's talk. I mean, that's completely fine too. If you guys want to explain why you think it was best, that certain dependents were cut out, I'd love to know. Let me know in the comments. My name's Mr.Stitch. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. And if you did enjoy the video, please make sure to drop a like, comment, rating, subscription, or maybe even your pants. Peace. Oh, and also, if you're interested in getting in the stock market, check out some of these videos, or rather this video right here, or that video, somewhere on the screen, and you guys will learn a little bit more about stock investing.